Hey, Liam Ward here at LearnTheHarmonica.com. Today I want to discuss what makes Kim Wilson and some of the classic players like Little Walter so fabulous. And of course there's many things that make their playing wonderful, expressive and varied. But something that's really been kind of on my mind recently is to do with the way they can manipulate one lick and make it into lots of different versions of itself. I've been inspired by reading this book recently, Soundscapes by Paul Robertson. He almost died. He had all these kind of visions about life and about music. He is a classical violin player, and he talks about some of his heroes on the violin being able to manipulate time and manipulate the notes that they're using in a way that no one else seems to be able to. They seem to have more freedom than everyone else, and it chimed with something that I've been thinking about recently and I've given some workshops on, and that's this idea of taking a lick and changing it in various different ways so that it becomes not just one lick but 20 different variations of itself, or if you change iteration by iteration it can become a completely different thing as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about those ideas with you in today's lesson. The thing about creativity and improvisation is that it's not exactly what it seems on the surface. So of course great players can come up with a broader range of ideas, but one of the things they do which is amazing as well is not just come up with completely new and out there phrases and concepts and kind of themes. One of the great things that they also do is they take simple phrases and they use them in different ways. They change different things about them. So it's actually about repetition, which might seem almost at odds with this idea of improvisation and variety and kind of creativity. Repetition, that is playing the same thing again and again. That's strange. But if you kind of change this idea ever so slightly of repetition and think of repetition with variation, then immediately you're opening up your mind to a great wealth of creativity. And actually, if you think about psychologically what that does to the listener, people like to hear things over and again, not endlessly forever, but if you play the same thing, maybe you play it exactly the same way sometimes, but if you change it ever so slightly, then it does something wonderful as a listener, that you kind of, you've grasped onto that thing you've heard, you liked it, hopefully, and you want to hear it again. But when it comes back at you slightly different from before, it has this other effect of, it's new, but it's the same. And that's a wonderful way of listening to things. It's very satisfying, I think, as a listener. And so if you put that into your playing, then it's a great technique for keeping people's interest. So if we take as an example something like My Babe by Little Walter, you know, he was a legend. If we think of the kind of My Babe style riff, the little lick, I'm on a C harp. You could play that lick over and over again exactly the same. Or you could choose to vary it. So you could, instead of it always being, it might sort of start to change and sound more like this. Starting to introduce some different ideas in there just to play around with it so it isn't exactly the same. So I'm still grooving on the same kind of feel. I'm still broadly playing the same song, if you like. I'm giving you the same idea, the skeleton of the piece, but I'm trying to introduce some different ideas. I mean, that wasn't Little Walter quality. It's not Kim Wilson quality, it's just me sort of playing around with some ideas. But there are lots of different ways of changing a lick, and you can do a form of practice which kind of goes through these things bit by bit. You can take a very basic idea, and this is one of the wonderful things about this. Whatever your level, you can work on this technique. Because it doesn't matter if you can't play that My Babe lick, even if you can just play some really basic little phrases. They don't have to include bends, they don't have to include anything fancy. You can still play with various elements of them. The more ability you have, the more variety you can add. But even as a beginner player, you can use this technique to improve your playing almost overnight. So, what are the kind of textures that I'm talking about? Well, you can change the speed of what you're playing so that it's slower or faster than usual. So you can half time a lick, or you can double time it, and it becomes a different thing because it's taking up a different length of space. The length of notes are different. So although the tones that you're playing might be the same, it's a different phrase, and it sounds very different in the context of a song to play it faster or slower. You can also change articulations. So if you're able to play kind of chordal stuff or tongue-slapped notes, you can completely change the textures of the notes you're playing so that they go between being kind of, or I did a little bit of a bend there, but just a 3-draw, you might slap that, or you might kind of double up that note. I'm also putting some vibrato on there as well. You can also use tongue flutters and tongue switches, other tongue blocking techniques, but even if you're not a tongue blocker at all, you can still change loads of stuff. You can change the dynamics of what you're playing. So you don't always have to play it the same volume. You can play it really quiet. You can play it really loud as well, and you can vary. You can go up and you can come down again, and you can change and create a story around what you're playing. With longer phrases, you can create a whole landscape of what you're doing. And that's without even changing the notes that you're playing. You can then start to think, well, how can I take this lick and change it a little bit more radically? And that starts to include changing the notes. So it might be just changing the octave it's in. So taking those very same notes and playing them higher or lower on the harmonica, finding the equivalent notes in the octave above or below. Or you can start kind of moving some of those notes to kind of earlier, holding them longer, making them shorter, that sort of thing. You can also start adding notes and taking notes away. And if you start doing that and do kind of take the lick, add a note here, take a note away there, and then add a different note, take another note away, it can become a completely different thing, which is almost a different exercise. But if you just work on kind of changing it ever so slightly, then you're adding variation but keeping it almost as the same skeleton lick as I said before. So I encourage you to try out some of these ideas and let me know how you're getting on. I've done some workshops on this and I've found that students really like it. It's been really useful in their playing, and they find that it really broadens what they can play in a way that doesn't involve learning loads of new songs or solos or licks. It's just a case of using what you've got and maximising the potential of it. With this in mind, I have created a premium lesson called Multiply Your Riff Supply. And what we do in that lesson is we take one simple phrase and we apply all those techniques that I've mentioned in this lesson, and we see where we take that lick and what it becomes. So if you'd like to go through that process with me with a specific phrase so that it can help you learn quite how that works in practice, then check out the link to the premium lesson beneath this video. And if you're enjoying my premium lessons, consider becoming a member of my website, where for $19.99 each month, you get access to all of my premium lessons and tabs, and you can access them whenever and wherever you like. And if you join up for a yearly membership today, then you'll get 2 months absolutely free. So do check out the link to that as well. I hope the ideas that I've discussed with you today inspire you, give you some kind of food for thought. Do give me your feedback and your questions and let me know how you're getting on. I'd love to hear from all of you. Until I see you again, good luck with your practice. See you soon. Cheers. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel and click that bell to get free harmonica lessons every single week.